Why do you think support isn't up to the level of, what we expect?
Don't be surprised if the first message you get from Amazon is go away. We don't want you. We don't want your business.
Let's talk a little bit about suspension, ASIN suspension, account suspension.
Amazon hasn't been motivated to make their operations more efficient. That's what this is really all about.
So when somebody reaches out to you and say, yeah, we've got an ASIN and it's been suspended, what is your thought process?
But I think also, having brand registry also shows Amazon that you are a little bit more serious.
Do you think Amazon, the more times you appeal, the more likely they're going to be, your chances of being approved are going to be lower?
It's better to send it to us and not to send that stuff to Amazon. Once you start sending it to Amazon, do you know what you're doing? You're giving them an excuse to ignore you.
Welcome to Power Your E-commerce Business, the go-to series for busy entrepreneurs like you. Product research, sales, marketing, branding, shipping and logistics. We share knowledge and information every week from top experts serving the MENA region to help you power your e-commerce business. How to avoid getting your listing or your account suspended on Amazon. In this episode of Power Your E-commerce Business, I'm interviewing Leah and Chris from eCommerce Chris, and that's exactly what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about how to avoid account as well as ASIN suspension and how to reinstate an account or an ASIN that has been suspended. Leah and Chris also go through the specifics of how to contact and talk to Amazon seller support, what is the best way to communicate, and what are some of the pitfalls to avoid in order to not get your case not looked after. Are you ready? Let's get going.
So Chris and Leah, I'm so excited to have you on the podcast. And before we get started and talk about suspension, reinstatement, all of that stuff, let's talk a little bit about eCommerce Chris. And in particular, Chris, why did you decide to set up the company? Give us a little bit about, your background and your history.
Right. I love starting with an easy question with an easy answer. That's a good way to kick it off. Worked at Amazon for several years on the so-called seller performance teams. I noticed toward the end of my tenure at Amazon, which was several years ago now because we've been consulting for several years since, I noticed that things are trending downhill. Communication was getting worse. Investigation quality was getting worse. I saw a lot of things kind of going wrong around me. And so I started envisioning this new concept where there could be a consultant, somebody that worked on those teams like myself, who could assist and advocate for sellers outside, from the outside of the company. So I kind of took a year and change off after I left Amazon and started this business because numerous sellers, it was obvious, weren't getting their questions answered, needed some help with understanding the appeals process, needed some help understanding how to strategize, how to communicate with Amazon on a listing suspension or an account suspension. Their entire business might be shut off or shut down. So I was able to kind of jump in and fill that void. Back in those days, there weren't really a lot of resources available. Just maybe some basic articles, and there might have even been a couple of YouTube videos, but nothing like what you see, today. So
I don't think there's still not a lot of resources, I think. So that's why I'm so happy that we got connected. And I'm sure a lot of people are going to find a lot of value from us doing this and from everything that you guys are doing as well. I think maybe a lot of people are going to be happy with what you just said because a lot of people reach out to me and they say, like I told you before we started, a lot of people feel, especially in the beginning, that Amazon doesn't provide them the support that they expect from a company like Amazon. And that's 100% true. Why do you think, though? Why do you think support isn't up to the level of, what we expect?
Leah had a lot of experience with managing an Amazon business, like for a startup. And when she and I first met, we had a lot of conversations about, why is Amazon so disinterested or so terrible in communication with sellers? Because you would think sellers form a revenue stream, and the marketplace is a big chunk of, their profit and their lifeblood. They don't have a lot of motivation to devote headcount or resources to helping sellers understand these things. I mean, they're kind of motivated to do the minimum, not the maximum for sellers. So it's like, well, we need to rewrite a few messages to make them clearer. So we'll work on a couple messages, but we'll leave all the rest of them the same. I mean, some of the messages we see them sending to sellers are worse. Like, we didn't think the messaging could be worse until they rewrite them. And then we're like, okay, so they obviously gave this one to somebody to rewrite, and it wasn't the right person, or it wasn't the right team. I mean, it's just a lack of motivation, a lack of interest. They've got mountains of hundreds of millions of dollars flowing through the marketplace. There's not a lot of competition in terms of e-commerce marketplaces out there. They're dominating that field, and they just, they're expanding in so many other areas of the company, so many other areas of, managing how supply chain works and how retail works, that's where the resources go.
I think also something that I didn't realize before I started working with you, I mean, I kind of suspected, but didn't realize quite so much. The teams are very siloed. So the team that you're speaking to on the phone has absolutely nothing to do with the team that is suspending your listings or your
making
account,
the decisions,
or the team that is enforcing any of this. So one, you have not very well trained teams, but then also like nobody ever talks to each other. So there can be an issue that could be endemic that the team that's responsible for fixing it has no idea is happening because they aren't able to communicate with each other. And I think we're seeing more and more of that as a lot of these issues are requiring multiple teams to fix. They just have no way of communicating with each other, so there's no way of getting it done.
The silver lining, though, is, sellers have stepped up. People like you, entrepreneurs, people like us, we've stepped up because we found that there was a gap, and we would be able to, with your experience and knowledge, you are able to bridge that gap and to help sellers, companies, brand owners. So the silver lining is maybe you're not, as a seller, going to find support through Amazon, but there are so many businesses and entrepreneurs that have set up companies and services to help support sellers. So let's help sellers, let sellers help sellers, or let entrepreneurs help each other out. And, you don't need to, obviously you need Amazon, but you don't need Amazon support to a certain extent. What do you think?
You're right. Yeah. And Leah can back me up on this, but the resources, there are some bad resources out there that are basic or generic, and it's just people trying to get clicks to their website. There are some good resources out there, but the support within the Amazon community can be effective to fill in the gaps of what Amazon doesn't tell you on policy pages, or what Amazon doesn't put in the seller forums. Some of us out there that know what we're talking about, know what we're doing, can combine with the little information Amazon does provide to kind of, get close to 90 or 100% of what sellers need. So
yeah, and that's something that I tell sellers as well. Part of the benefit of working with an agency, and I think this is true for like ads and things like that as well, is that we're able to see trends. We're not just looking in one account. We're seeing what's happening across hundreds or thousands of accounts at a time. So we're able to see trends in what Amazon is doing, and actually are pretty good at this point of predicting what the next thing is going to be. Even something as simple as like if they have a negative news article about something, it's a pretty good bet that they're going to start enforcing whatever that negative article was about in the next few weeks.
Right.
So that's, like I having managed seller accounts myself, it is very easy to get that, like, this is happening in my account and how could Amazon be doing this? And this can't be right. But when you start looking at it across all of them, it's like, oh, okay, so this is what they're doing.
Yeah, you're combining knowledge and experience, which is invaluable, which is perfect. So let's talk a little bit about suspension, ASIN suspension, account suspension. Obviously, the easiest thing is not to get suspended. That would be Lovely. But so what are the common reasons why people reach out to you, or actually when people reach out to you, what are the common reasons you find they have, what problems or what mistakes have they done, so that we can learn from these mistakes and hopefully avoid them, for them to be for their ASINs to be suspended, or even their accounts to be suspended?
Yeah, it's again, that's like something that does tend to follow trends. Like we often find that over a month we'll kind of get all of the same kinds of cases, and then we won't get those cases for a long time, and it'll go on to the next thing. Particularly things that I work on, like listing violations. That's something that they tend to do in like purges, and then they don't do it again for 6 months. But ones that we're seeing kind of all of the time at this point are things to do with product compliance. Amazon is very sensitive to product compliance at the moment because they've been warned by a few government agencies at this point about legal compliance of products on Amazon. So things like pesticides, when COVID started, any claims that your product can, any health claims as well. So like even like supplements, like if you're making disease claims, they're very sensitive to that at the moment, which again is also a legal issue. And then there are things that we kind of just see all of the time. So things like IP infringements, trademark, patent, copyright, we're seeing those all the time for years. Those are probably, I would say those are probably the most common. Would you agree, Chris?
Yeah, and also fake claims for intellectual property. Amazon, unfortunately, is really bad at vetting real claims from fake claims in terms of intellectual property. They have a very kind of rubber stamp, copy and paste approach, where if somebody makes an IP claim, it's like, well, it's not our job to vet this for veracity or truth. So you two go sort this out, but we got a claim that your listing is violating a trademark or a patent or a copyright, so we're just going to enforce it. A lot of, especially new sellers, don't anticipate that. I'd imagine that you are hearing from a lot of sellers that are new to Amazon, from based, in the Middle East or Middle East marketplaces, or based there selling in the US, Europe, other marketplaces. They don't anticipate fake intellectual property claims cutting them down. Like they're thinking about, what am I putting in my ads? What's my SEO or PPC expenditures? How do I improve my sales rank, right? They don't think early in the process, what if Amazon doesn't even let me sell? What if they fail to verify my identity? And so I think I'm just going through a very simple process to enter my name, address, phone number, whatever. And instead I get a suspension notification. Like a lot of new sellers are very, very surprised that the first experience they have with Amazon is stop, we don't want you, right? And then they get upset, they get frustrated, they say, why are you doing this? And like we were saying a moment ago, they don't understand that communication from Amazon, it might be a $2 trillion company, but communication is their weak spot. It's their weakest spot in some ways. So they might send you a very generic message saying you didn't give us the right information, without saying what's missing, without saying what's not accurate, without saying what's incomplete. And sellers who are new, I mean, this is one thing I'd probably say when you're having conversations with new e-commerce companies that are looking to sell on Amazon. I mean, I'm sure after you're at our conference here in the US at Seller Velocity, you'll talk to some sellers in person about this too. Yeah. But having that conversation with, don't be surprised if the first message you get from Amazon is go away. We don't want you. We don't want your business. It doesn't mean you can't fix it. It doesn't mean it can't be resolved. So don't be discouraged, but be prepared, like mentally prepared for the first message is the last thing you expect.
Right. I would also say like product quality issues are another kind of major issue, which Amazon doesn't really call it that anymore. Like you'll usually get, they'll say you sold as new or inauthentic, but in our experience, it tends to actually be a product quality issue. So it's not that you're selling used products, it's that your product was damaged or it was defective. So that meant the customer thought that it was used or counterfeit. Yeah. And that's a major one that we also see consistently over the years of, again, sellers not understanding. So they just respond back, no, I only sell new products. And then they can't get reinstated because that's not a plan of action. We kind of think of it as a decision tree. Are you selling used products? No. Okay. Why do people think you're selling used products? That's what you need to explain to Amazon. And that's what you need to fix.
Got it. So before we dive into how you get yourself reinstated and stuff like that, and what is the system that you guys would follow, or the plan of action. Is there anything that we can give to the audience that are watching or listening to this, if they are about to list their products, or if they just recently listed their products? Are there a few tips that we can give them in order to avoid suspension, or is it just the common things? So you know, don't sell bad products.
That's a big one. Yeah, there are some like general things that we recommend that all sellers do. I mean, more for brand owners in this particular case, but certainly like register your trademark and
Yes.
sign up with brand registry. That should
Yes.
be first order of business. And I know getting a trademark takes a little bit of time, but you can get started, and they're accepting pending marks now.
Let's unpack that a little bit, Leah. Why? Because a lot of people think brand registry, especially when they start out on Amazon, they think, oh yes, I'll have a cool video on my listing. Wonderful. That will improve my conversion.
Right.
And like nobody's gonna hijack my listing, and that's it. Like sometimes it doesn't warrant the time, effort, and money you have to pay in order to get trademark just to have a video. So let's unpack that a little bit. Why does brand registry protect you? Yeah.
Well, so first of all, it doesn't necessarily protect you from being hijacked.
Kind of.
It's supposed to, but it does not.
In theory.
In theory.
It's just giving you an additional layer of protection and an additional team that is supposed to help you.
Yeah.
So in terms of listing hijacking, once again, you have a lot better chance of fixing that hijacking if you're brand registered. And it also stops other people from registering your brand, which is something that we see surprisingly often. Somebody steals somebody else's brand out from under them and registers their trademark before they have a chance to. And then there's not much you can do outside of going to court. You know, that's a long process. It's not something you're going to get resolved with a couple of notes to Amazon. So it just gives you that additional protection and that additional team that you can eventually probably have to cite for not doing their job. But it gives you that extra layer, and it also gives you additional tools. So, you know, in terms of looking at other listings that may be infringing on your info, and it gives you additional cues for reporting issues like that.
I think it also scares off a little bit. It scares off a few other like sellers, because when they see the brand is registered, they have a store on Amazon, all of that, it seems to be like, maybe I'm not going to mess with this seller or this account because like it looks like a legitimate business rather than it looks like a small, tiny seller.
Yeah, I think, you know, and we kind of say that as well because it's something that we're dealing more and more with is abuse from other sellers. You really can't afford to not push back really hard. So, you know, brand registry is a place to start, but then if anybody tries to attack you, you can't just, you know, because we know sellers who are just like, oh, it's not an important ASIN, I'll just leave it. But that just shows that you're a weak target and they're just going to keep coming back and hitting you.
Yeah. Some sellers say, well, we're out of inventory for this item and we're not planning on ordering more or making more of this product. So they leave something unresolved. And like Leah said, that shows that your door is open to attack and that you're not sealing off those cracks, and it makes you look vulnerable. And I think a lot of, especially new brands, don't understand that unless they, you know, hear it on a podcast or they read an article about it. Then they start kind of picking up these clues like, well, maybe we should, you know, get a bit more prevention in place. Because Amazon, and then secondarily, a lot of sellers just kind of count on Amazon to, you know, solve problems for them. Hey, we noticed that this is, you know, we're being attacked or this is going wrong. We don't know what's going on. You guys have all the data. You guys have all the info on the back end. You figure it out for us. And of course, you just get an email or a message from partner support or seller support saying, oh, we're reviewing it. Thanks for letting us know. No sign, no promise of when an action will be taken, maybe never. No real promise on when a response will come, maybe never. They're just kind of like, I think sellers are starting to understand now, they're just trying to get these contacts out of the queues. They're not really necessarily tasked with resolving something long term. They're tasked with resolving it in that minute, in that moment, right? Think in terms of like a phone tree of a customer service arm of a large tech company, right? Most tech companies are handling this stuff kind of the same way, which is I've got a call, I have to handle it and just hand it off to the next team, but then my role is done. I don't have to circle back in, 48 hours and see if this has been resolved. That's not really how Amazon works. The sooner sellers understand that stuff, it's like the burden's on you to help Amazon fix it for you. That's where we come in.
You need to show them how to fix it.
I mean, sometimes we do. That's the funny thing.
Exactly.
We regularly have calls where we have to tell people in Amazon what they need to do. But I think also, having brand registry also shows Amazon that you are a little bit more serious than another seller that doesn't. And that's something that Chris and I talk a lot about, is how to present yourself as the kind of seller that Amazon wants.
Exactly.
And things like that really do. I mean, that's not the end of it, but as one of the steps to make yourself look a little bit more serious, it's certainly a good step in the right direction.
Yeah. Okay. And Leah talks to catalog teams. Like she regularly has to talk to someone who says, well, I'm not sure what's going on or why this is happening. And she has to tell the catalog rep based on her experience, because the catalog rep either is looking at the wrong thing or doesn't have the experience. I have the same kind of experience when I'm talking to account health services reps, where they will say, I'm not sure what this is. Like they're looking at something I can't see and they can't interpret it because they're not sure what it says, or somebody in seller performance wrote it in seller performance speak or jargon and they're not familiar with it.
Exactly.
But I'm familiar with it from years of experience. So I'm telling the internal rep, oh, this is what's happening. And then they'll sort of say, oh, well, now it makes sense. So we do have to and that's fine. Sometimes it's like between all of us, the seller, us, the rep at Amazon, we can sort it out and fill that void. But it takes like 3 parties to get to that solution. So it's just you can't take this stuff for granted.
Exactly. What else, Leah, other than brand registration?
So again, for product quality, things like that, certainly opting out of repackaging for returns is a big one. That's, again, a surprising thing that not a lot of sellers necessarily opt out of. And also not using stickerless inventory. So if you're sending in your products stickerless, that just means that Amazon's throwing it into a bin with all of the other same products that other people are sending in, which may be counterfeit, which may be damaged, which may be used. And Amazon has no way of knowing which of that inventory is yours and which of that inventory is somebody else. So you're potentially on the hook for somebody else sending in a counterfeit product that Amazon then sends to one of your customers. So using stickered inventory is a really big one in terms of reducing product quality issues. In terms of the IP complaints, obviously there's not a whole lot you can do about stopping fake complaints. But certainly to stop real complaints, checking any terms that you're using to make sure they're not trademarked. Also, I mean, this goes back to brand registry, trademarking your own trademarks. And also something that we're starting to suggest to more and more people is actually copywriting your content, like officially copywriting it, copywriting your images, copywriting your text, because another tactic that we've been seeing some less than scrupulous sellers doing is actually stealing somebody else's content, copywriting it out from under them, and then reporting the original creator for copyright infringement.
Right.
So but we're talking
that's a big one that
like potentially 7 to 8 figures of sales a year.
Oh yeah.
So you're when you're making that much money on such an easy platform like Amazon, you're gonna have to, there's gonna be attack. So it's not like they're attacking somebody that's making $100 a month.
Right.
So they're,
right.
it is important to protect yourself, especially when you're going to get to that. Hopefully everybody gets to that level, but you need to protect yourself, of course.
If you're successful on Amazon, even if you just have one product, one listing, you're essentially like a public figure at that point. It's almost like being in the media or being publicly known on television, except it's on the marketplace. Your product is known, everyone can see it's successful. They want some of your success. Well, there are ways, unfortunately, of manipulating things where they can eat away at some of your sales. If they're knowledgeable about some so-called black hat tactics, if they know how to abuse a brand, if they know how to get listings taken down with fake complaints or intellectual property complaints that aren't real, they know how to do it because there's a lot of money at stake. And that's how big Amazon is. Some people didn't even have a business. They launched 1 or 2 products and all of a sudden they're either grossing or netting 1 to 2 million a year, like almost
Exactly.
overnight. To them, it'll
Exactly.
feel overnight.
You're
So
gonna,
it's like
you're gonna get
yeah.
on people's radar for sure.
Yeah.
Right.
And they know how to
it's
take
also so
shots at you.
It's so competitive now. So
It
if
is.
you can do something that gets your competitor taken down for a few days to a week, we often see around holidays an increase
Right.
in this because, like if you have a Valentine's Day product, week before Valentine's Day, if you can get that listing taken down, your listing just goes straight up. And so we see a lot of that, which is another thing that you should be doing to protect yourself is actually filling in all of the fields in your product listing so nobody can come in and put fake keywords in there to get you taken down. That's a very big tactic at the moment that we unfortunately deal with. We even know a lot of bigger sellers, they actually use the API to push their listing contributions every 15 minutes. So they can constantly override anybody trying to add abusive keywords into their listings.
That's interesting.
And
15
it's
minutes.
funny that you said, like she said, during holidays that this stuff peaks. It's funny that you said like 7 figures a year because there were people we worked with in December. So this is just 2 months ago.
Yeah.
They were losing 7 figures like in the month.
I know.
From the abuse, like a fake copyright complaint, a fake, I mean, no basis to it. And they were losing, and we had one client that was losing, I think, between November, December, they were looking at 2.6 million in lost sales of inventory.
Yeah, I just finished one where they were losing 2 million a week because of some
right. She had one 2 million a week the other day. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and again, like, that one wasn't confirmed abuse, but there was a relatively high chance that it was abuse that got them taken down. So
yeah.
But fixing it quickly makes a big difference when like week to week, you're talking 7 figures. A difference between 1 week and 3 weeks, without sounding self-serving. I mean, we do recommend that people at least show us this stuff early on, as opposed to trying several times.
Exactly.
And then like 4 weeks later, we've lost 2 million because we're losing 500 grand a week, or we've lost 4 million because we went all of November into December. Approaching us sooner than later, just to look at it and give you kind of like, this is what we think's going on, even if you decide to handle it yourself, please,
Exactly.
Don't
you don't have any time to waste. Just try to find a solution as quickly as possible. Yeah.
Not just the time. I mean, it'll always take some time to resolve, but don't just send the same thing over and over and over and hope that, the 4th time we try it, Amazon's suddenly going to get it and suddenly do something different. The percentages are low that you're going to send the same thing several times. And on the 7th time, they're going to suddenly turn all the way around and understand it's not the way Amazon works.
Or worse, you get mad and you start sending angry, abusive messages to Amazon because there's not a lot we can do at that point. I mean, and something that we also tell a lot of sellers is, if you try to bring us in too late, we can't always fix the damage that has been done by the previous appeals or the previous stuff that you sent in. If you've burnt too many bridges, it's a lot harder to get reinstated at that point.
Yeah.
Got it.
And this goes back to what I said at the very beginning of your podcast. Like, the 3 of us are, continually trying to help sellers understand when you're just getting into Amazon, go in with the assumption that you might have a problem like this early on, so that you won't feel so much frustration that you start sending these messages to them in all caps, like the one I read yesterday, which was basically like, I read this message, I won't take you through the whole paragraph after paragraph. They were like accusing Amazon of criminal activity, and like frustration and emotion has totally taken over.
Yeah.
I mean, Leah and I have been preaching this for years, so I think it's less likely to happen nowadays, but it still happens. And we're trying to get to people early, and hopefully you can help us communicate that for, sellers selling in the Middle East or based in the Middle East selling here. Like, don't be taken by surprise when crazy stuff happens. And it doesn't
I like to think
sense.
of it as a rite of passage, actually. You're not a real Amazon seller until you have to deal with some crazy situation.
Excellent way of putting it. Yeah.
Especially when you least expect it.
Right, exactly. It's like, oh, yep, this is real now.
Exactly like Chris said. Like, whenever you don't expect it, that's when it's going to happen, for sure.
Right.
Yep. Exactly. Well, it's like they say you're not really internet famous until you get some trolls. It's the same kind of thing. Like, you're not really an Amazon seller until you have to deal with some ridiculousness.
So, Chris, I was thinking as you were explaining a few minutes ago, I was thinking, the same type of abuse happens in retail, I think. Like the
Mhm.
competition is sometimes dirty. However, in retail, in brick and mortar, it's just different and it's a little bit slower. But
Right.
online and especially on Amazon, everything happens so fast because you can, immediately
Yeah.
become like you said, you can generate $2 million in a month just out of
Mhm.
December. So it's a fairly low barrier to entry type of business, and that's
Yes.
why
Yeah.
you need to have your gloves on and be ready, because like you said, Amazon is unable. Well, I always say Amazon try to play fair.
Mhm.
However, they don't, but they try to play fair, so they try
Right.
to act, they try to stay out of it, I feel.
Well, maybe this is a good way for people to think about it, maybe kind of a simple analogy.
Mm,
But so if you're in brick and mortar retail
mm,
and you fill a bunch of backpacks or a bunch of bags with your branded product and you walk into a store and you take your competitor's product off the shelves
yeah,
and put them in a bin somewhere or in a bunch of carts, and your friends, take that cart to another part of the store,
and your
and
friends
you
think
put
you're
all
so
your
smart.
products on the
Yeah.
shelf.
Yeah,
Like, this is kind of what's happening on Amazon. Your
exactly.
friends come with you into the store and you take all their products off the shelf with great position at eye level, and you put all your products and all your boxes on that shelf.
Yeah,
Probably by the end of that day or like the next morning, like some store manager is going to see it or hear about it
yeah,
and figure it out and take all your stuff off the shelf and put all the right stuff back on,
exactly.
or they're going to know that something terrible happened. When people do this on Amazon, like they get your listing taken down and they put their listings, up in your place, you have to get it to Amazon's attention. And
Exactly.
Amazon reps are like, they're going to say the equivalent of, well, hold on, we have a huge store. Which aisle are you talking about? Which store are you talking about? Which
Who are you
shelf are you
again?
talking about?
Yeah,
Who
right.
are you? First of all, like, who are you?
Yeah,
Which aisle or shelf or store are you talking about? In which zip code? We have to go find it. And then when we find it, we have to refer a ticket to somebody else who has to take those boxes off the shelf and put yours back. It's like a multi-step, chaotic, convoluted process. So if you were in brick and mortar retail, the store manager would be responsible for one thing, basically take all these boxes of this crazy brand off the shelf and somehow go back into the back room and take those boxes and put them back. Like, that's almost like 1 to 2 steps. With
exactly.
Amazon, this would be like, who are you? What are you talking about? Where are you talking about? When did this happen? Okay, I'll go look. And like
Yeah.
days are passing while
Thank you
this
for your
happens.
patience. We're still looking into
Right.
it.
Right. That's the
Right.
difference between what
Yeah,
happens on an e-commerce marketplace
exactly.
and like what would happen, like you said, in retail. There's
Yeah,
dirty, nasty behavior.
yeah,
But if it's like a store shelf that you can go look at within 2 seconds versus somewhere in the marketplace,
yeah,
somewhere on the
yeah,
platform,
yeah.
totally different scenario. So I think that's just a good way for people to kind of imagine this in terms of troubleshooting. Like Leah was saying, I mean, she has to kind of point things out to brand registry
Yeah.
when she's on these calls. Like, first of all, you gave us an answer which doesn't make sense with what we're looking at. So let me
Well,
help you
usually we
go
have
look
to
at.
explain to brand registry what it is that their job is, and then we get into
Right.
that. A
But
lot of
let's
times they're like,
assume.
"Oh, we don't do this," and they send you back to catalog,
Right.
and you're like, "No, no, 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 no." Like,
Right.
catalog said specifically that you guys have control of this listing, so there's a lot of that too.
Right.
But I think
Right.
also, in terms of like what you were saying about the lower barriers to entry, you're also seeing like problems that for a retail business would happen sort of in the early stages when you're talking about small amounts of money and they would have time to fix. You're now getting those problems when you're a multi-million-dollar business and like a
Yeah.
few months in. So things that would be still a problem, but a relatively easy problem to fix at that smaller level are now huge pressing issues when you've just started your business and you don't necessarily know what you're doing. I mean, there are so many parts to this. There's like legal aspects, and if you're shipping overseas, you have logistics and all of these things. Most people getting started at Amazon don't have a background in any of those things. So
Exactly.
you're dealing with issues that you didn't even necessarily know were an issue. But if you were selling to a store, or if you were, getting started in a more traditional retail model, those are things that would be flagged to you. Like, a big box store is not going to sell your products unless you can show that you have this, this, and this showing your compliance documentation. Whereas Amazon are like, yeah, sure, list it. Oh, where is that
Yeah.
documentation?
Yeah.
And they're like, ah,
Right.
No, it's fine for now. Yeah.
yeah. But in like a month, we're gonna ask you about that, and you're gonna not know what we're talking about.
Exactly.
Right. And the assumption, like what I was talking about with Leah working with these guys to troubleshoot, my assumption was that the rep actually has been around the block a couple of times and knows a little bit about the job so that she doesn't have to take them from zero.
Yeah.
Even then, she'll interact with reps who will say, well, I looked it up and we fixed it 2 days ago. I can see the message, the ticket was closed. And she has to say, look again, what's live on the site? The same thing happened all over again. So, I mean, even with competent reps that have some training or some experience, you still have to like move their head and get them to look in the right place.
Yeah.
You know, imagining you're helping your friend, like look at something and you're like, no, look over there. You're like helping point. I know it's like, no, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Well,
And
and
then
it was what
they'll
you were
kind of-
saying before. They only have like 4 minutes per investigation.
Yeah.
Like they don't have time to think about it. Even we went to
Right.
Boost a few years ago, Amazon's conferences that I don't think they do anymore actually.
No. They changed.
And
the
even
name
there,
to-
like they had to scan everybody's badge because the Amazon's reps, they had to speak to a certain number of people per hour.
yeah.
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
And they're tracking everything. So it's not how well you resolved the issue. It's how many of these did you get through. So the
I think
easiest thing
they
for
are.
them to do is
That's
just be
a
like,
really
"Nah."
valid point. I think they're just not able to keep up. I feel
Yeah.
that they're just not able to keep up with what is happening, like on the website. And just like Chris said in the very beginning, they don't really have the motivation because, like,
Right. That's
the
what
only
they're
thing that
being
can motivate
judged
you
on.
is when you have a competitor. That's the beauty of competition because it motivates you. That's why people like going to the gym because you can see other people working out looking really good. That's why you want to go to the gym. But if you're working out alone at home, who's even looking at you? So
I work out at home alone. What's wrong with that?
That's why you're not motivated.
Oh, I'm not motivated.
You're
I'm
not
not motivated
motivated.
enough, probably. Yeah.
You're self.
But some of the
You're
changes-
you're the self motivated type of entrepreneur or gym
Right.
goer. So that's why.
Right.
Because we have
But-
some in-person events coming up, so gotta get
Yeah,
Right,
yeah,
right.
yeah.
So, I mean,
So
in terms
let's-
of, by the way,
Yeah,
before
go
we
ahead.
wrap up this, I want to thank you for speaking at our Seller Velocity conference in Bend, Oregon, April
Yes.
28th and 29th.
I'm super excited. I'm very, very
Yeah.
happy to be part of the conference. And I'll definitely leave for everyone who's watching this on YouTube. I'll leave the link to anyone who wants to join us and register and be part of this. I'll leave the link in the description box of the video. So
Anyway, we're looking
let's
forward
talk
to having you. We're very
I'm so happy.
excited to have you as a speaker and a guest
Thank you
here
so much.
because this should be and could be a hot topic. Just sellers who are based in the Middle East, selling in the Europe and selling in the UK and in Europe and in the United States, but also Middle East sellers selling in the Middle East, the new marketplaces there.
Yeah. That's exactly what we're going to be what I'm going to be talking about, just talking about unlocking the Middle East and all of that stuff as well. So it's going to be fantastic for sure. So I would like to give people, I know it's not easy, but I would like to give people that have this issue, that have an ASIN that has been suspended, or even worse yet, their whole account is suspended. What is normally something that you guys do? How do you approach it so that maybe if somebody wants to do it on their own, or at least test, whatever they need to do on their own, that they can take some tips from you. So when somebody reaches out to you and say, yeah, we've got an ASIN and it's been suspended, what is your thought process?
So the first part, which I think a lot of people skip because they're in a panic, the first part is investigating it yourself. So
They are panicking,
one,
yeah.
actually read the full notification that Amazon sent you. That's usually the first thing we ask people for. Like we get a message saying, hey, I was suspended. And we're like, cool, can we see the notification from Amazon? So that's the start. And then you have to start looking in your account. So if it's an ASIN, you want to look at that ASIN. If it's the full account, you want to start looking. Account health dashboard is a really great place to start because that's going to show you any previous issues on the account. But you need to start looking at what it is that Amazon is talking about. You can't just, a lot of people, their first reaction is like, well, this is wrong, or this is somebody trying to, take me out or whatever. But you really need to start from okay, well, what went wrong on my side? That's really the biggest thing, because you can't write a good plan of action until you actually know what went wrong. we see a lot of plans of action where they just sort of repeat back what Amazon told them in the notification, and Amazon already knows that. What they want to know is what went wrong on your end that caused the issue that they notified you about and maybe suspended your account or ASIN for. That's, I think, the biggest step. And we can get into like writing the plan of action and all of that stuff, but investigating your own account is something that I think is really difficult for sellers because you're so close to what's going on,
100%.
which is another thing where it's like, maybe have a friend look, or if or like if you don't want to hire out, like have somebody else who's not so involved take a look at what's going on, because that's really the key to writing a good plan of action. You can't just say like, no, I did nothing wrong, Amazon's wrong, reinstate me. That's not gonna anywhere.
We have some sellers approach us. It's okay to dispute their facts if you're certain, 100% certain that you're correct and that Amazon is looking at the wrong thing. It's not so much about interpretation. Can't really debate or argue the interpretation of metrics with them. I mean, if you've got them cold in terms of like you identified an error, then maybe they'll reverse it and you can dispute it. The problem is sellers like 60% of the time start out with, this is an Amazon mistake, I'm going to dispute it. And then that fails a couple of times, and then they come to us, and then we start doing the Q&A that Leah just described, asking them for a bit more detail, and then we find a flaw that they hadn't previously identified, or they knew it was there, but they de-emphasized it, right? They said, well, maybe that's true, but that's not what this is. You know what I mean?
Right.
And
or
it's
that's
like,
not
okay,
that important. And it's like, well, it's
right. Right. But that happens to any seller, and anyone could have this problem. So that's just normal. So why is Amazon? It's like, no, you don't understand. You've already given us a reason why they're rejecting your appeal, and you're going back to them. You're already thinking about the second appeal or the third appeal. You should be back on the first one. But it's the bias for action that sellers have. Often they're thinking about, we need to do something today. By the end of the day, they're not thinking about the odds of success of an appeal. It's like, well, you want to maximize your chances. Every time you go to them and say, we need this listing back, or we need our whole account back, you have to think in terms of what's a smart way of doing it versus, let's just try something and hope for the best. I mean, that's not, if you go in with that mentality, you're probably going to fail.
In everything.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
Well, especially with Amazon, because if Amazon sees one weakness, they might see strength, weakness, strength, weakness. They'll reject it. Sometimes just one weakness in a plan of action, which is the 3-part formatted appeal that they usually request. Maybe 2 of those 3 sections of a plan of action, they'll say, you know what, this looks pretty good. We're confident that the seller understands the problem, has an idea of what can be solved here, and they've got the right steps, but they're a little shaky on preventing it in the future. Or they like your resolution steps, but they think you're a little shaky on how this happened and the diagnostic, what happened to make this problem in the first place. They'll reject you for 1 out of those 3 sections not being strong enough.
Well, and that's the thing. If you don't have good root causes, they're not even going to read the second and third section. That they're just going to stop at that first root. If you can't nail the root causes, there's no way you're going to nail the prevention. So. And that's another area where I think people maybe get a little confused. The root causes isn't what happened. The root causes are what went wrong that caused that to happen. Right. So the root cause isn't that somebody thought your product was used. The root cause is your packaging wasn't sufficient to get it shipped to somebody without damage, and so they thought it was used. It's really nailing those causes that's going to allow you to nail the future prevention, because you can't prevent it if you don't know what caused it in the first place.
Yeah.
Do you feel the appeal being approved, or is it reduced every time you apply, every time you appeal? Like, by that I mean, should you make sure that, of course, you need to make sure that the first time you appeal, it's going to be 100% of a win for you? Do you think Amazon, the more times you appeal, the more likely they're going to be, your chances of being approved are going to be lower?
At a certain point, they just are going to stop responding to you. They're not going to keep wasting their time. So there isn't like a magic number. There used to be the number 3 used to float around as the magic number. There isn't a magic number, but if they're just seeing you sending in the same non-viable plan of action over and over again, they're just going to start ignoring you.
Yeah.
And we do see a lot of sellers, they just don't get a response anymore. It doesn't matter what they send in, they just don't get any response. And if they call into account health don't see any new notes. It's just being ignored.
And just like you said, Leah, people, you get frustrated as a human being. So you might start sending things that, you shouldn't be sending. So I'm only imagining people like are getting frustrated and they're sending out, maybe that's why Amazon stopped responding as well.
Oh,
right. Well,
yeah.
we see like they treat it like a conversation. So, Amazon will send back that we need more information, and they'll send back, what more information do you need? And it's never going to be a two-way conversation.
Got it.
You just have to figure out what that additional information is and present it all together again. That's another thing that people maybe don't realize, is that you have to give them all of the information every single time, because they're not going to go back in the case log to look.
Yeah, we completely understand the frustration, by the way. We're explaining the Amazon perspective, not because we agree with it.
Yeah, no, we don't.
Yeah.
But because we don't think you get any increased value in venting the frustration. Vent the frustration by, walk into another room and scream for a few minutes before you write something. Don't sit down and type the screaming and send that in. Like we think that there's value in venting the frustration, but not in any messaging you send to Amazon. If you need to send it someplace and nobody around you will listen, you can send us an email and say, this is driving me crazy. We're used to it. We're completely used to this. You can send us the message. I mean, I don't know if I want to read something in all caps that goes on for 2 pages like I did yesterday, but it's better to send it to us and not to send that stuff to Amazon. Once you start sending it to Amazon, do you know what you're doing? You're giving them an excuse to ignore you. And actually, they don't need an excuse. They can already kind of get away with ignoring you because it's their marketplace, it's their platform. They can kind of make it look like they gave you some time and then push you away. Don't give them any excuses to ignore you, because they will take it every time. They're looking for excuses to say, oh, this seller isn't serious. I'm going to move on to the next one. They get credit for work. They get credit for an investigation. And that's what a lot of new sellers need to understand.
Well, and I think a lot of people don't actually know that it is against Amazon's terms of service to send them abusive messages. So they can quite easily be like, code of conduct violation, and then
inappropriate they call it inappropriate contacts. They used to suspend sellers for sending inappropriate contacts to buyers, and they still do on occasion, but they're also saying, if you send us something that is a threat or angry or offensive, or
even things in all caps, we've seen them get up. Yeah, we've seen it for messages in all caps.
Yes. All caps is a big no-no. If you're used to sending your friends things in all caps when you're upset with them, sending that to Amazon is disqualification at that point. You're not considered a good player in their system. So we understand that.
It makes a lot of sense, because at the end of the day, it makes a lot of sense. But what I'm getting from you is, you need to conduct yourself as a business owner, even if you're still not at the level where you want to be, of course. But you need to conduct yourself professionally and as a business owner, as a brand owner, so that you are, Amazon reacts to you in the same energy that you're putting out. So it's not like you're talking to a friend or a person like who actually cares about you. You're talking to someone that, that's their job, and they just want to do their job.
And there's formality. It might seem, some people think email is casual. Yeah. There's a formality to this. So imagine you have a legal issue. You're standing in front of a judge. You're in open court. There's a bunch of people sitting behind you. There's a judge in front of you. And you're talking. Well, if you were standing in front of a judge with a bunch of people in open court and you started shouting for 2 minutes, how would that play out? Probably it wouldn't work out too well. Even if you weren't shouting, I mean, that's the all caps, right, is shouting. But even if you weren't shouting, if you talked for 5 minutes and you said the same thing, like the same 3 sentences over and over, would that work for 5 minutes? Or would the judge hold up their hand and say, I'm going to stop you there, because I don't have time to listen to 5 minutes of repetitive. That's what these appeals read like to a seller performance investigator like I used to be. So think strategically in terms of what will increase your odds of being accepted on appeal? Your success percentage, if you want to think of it that way.
Well, and you want to keep it as short as possible, as long with all of the information needed. So whenever I write a POA or any communication to Amazon, really, I go through it sentence by sentence to figure out, does this sentence actually add anything? And if it doesn't add anything, I take it out. Because again, like, they have a very short period of time to review this. So you need it to be easily skimmable. You need to get straight to the point. This is the fact. This is what we did. This is what's going to happen. That's it. That's all they want to see.
Quantity is not quality. More words.
There are like 10-page POAs that we see people send. They're not getting past the first page. Of course, maximum you want a page and a half. Ideally, no more than a page.
We still see people who tell us, I'm going to sit down tonight and write 3 or 4 more pages and add it to this just to show them how serious I am. And they don't understand, no one's going to read 4 pages or 3. And sometimes they won't read 2 if it's got the wrong material. Page and a half, 1 pager, like you're making a CV. That's what this is
exactly.
like.
Yeah, it's exactly it.
What is a CV that actually gets read by a human being?
Exactly.
Bullets, like bulleted points, like a header and bullets. This is really, really similar to that now. I'm not saying it's the best way to write to be, appeal things. Sometimes writing a paragraph will make more sense than to just write 1 or 2 lines per bullet in terms of how you want to communicate an idea. That's why people write books. Sometimes it's better in paragraph form, but that's not what this is.
Got it. It makes a lot of sense, because I'm sure a lot of people are going to think, let me just add so much information. Like, I'm going to give them everything they want, and I'm going to, do a 10-page POA, and then they're going to get all of the information that they want. And it's very, very refreshing to know that actually they're not going to read it. So just stick straight to the point, the facts, and that's it. It'll be more than enough.
We see that with documentation too. Amazon asks for a specific document 100%. And people are like, here are 10 other documents. And it's like, no, don't send them anything they're not asking for.
Say the same,
but it's only logical. It's not just like investigator metrics. I mean, think about if I gave you, today's Tuesday, if I gave you 3 books that are 200 or 300 pages each, and I said, read these 3 books by Friday, what are the odds that you're going to read 3 books in 3 days? You're essentially telling them to do that equivalent when you give them 4, 5, 6 pages, and there's several of you doing that. You're essentially saying, I'm giving you a book at 9 a.m. and I want it finished by noon. That's the same thing. With a good report, a good decision based on the content. Are you going to skim it? I mean, really, if I gave you 3 books and I said I want a report by Friday, you would skim them, right? Or you'd skip around within the book.
Of course, yeah.
This is the same thing.
That's why you guys are fantastic with all your knowledge, because this comes from experience. I know now that we're saying it makes it's common sense, and a lot of people are thinking, yeah, of course, it's common sense. But maybe you don't think about it in the heat of the moment when this is happening to you. So this is why, experience, not only knowledge is important, because you can get knowledge from a blog post, but experience is very valuable. And you have the experience, and I'm so happy that you're sharing it with me and with everyone who's watching this video. My last question, or the one thing that I want to talk about, is a service that you guys provide. And I think I'm sure you set this up because you're thinking prevention is like the best form of medicine, or the best type of medicine. So you have something called an account review. Walk us through that, Chris. What is that exactly, and what, how do you go about providing this type of service?
Right. And we emphasize prevention because actually with our consulting, our higher fee services are around reinstatement of a suspended account. We would prefer to charge a lower fee to somebody who is active and not suspended to have us review. In Leah's case, should be looking at listings. In my case, I'd be looking at their performance notifications to see if they got policy warnings or prior listing takedowns that could threaten the whole account. But these services aren't one size fits all. They're tailored and custom to that specific client or seller's account. in terms of what the warning signs already are that they've told us about. Most people come to us because they're worried, they're concerned, and they've already been warned for something, and they've already had some listings taken down. So on some situations, Leah's, doing a little bit more work on it and I'm doing less. And then other times, maybe it's a 60-40, 70-30, I'm doing a bit more and she's looking at listings and reviewing those. But we kind of go where the action is in terms of going where we see the most signs of trouble, whether or not the sellers identified those warning signs or we identify them ourselves when we go in.
Well, and I think a lot of people don't realize that if Amazon suspends an account, or depending on the listing block too, they actually do have an investigator go in and take a look. It's not just, I mean, some of them are automated, like late shipment isn't automated, you just automatically suspended.
Yes.
But if they're deciding to suspend the account for anything else, they do actually have an investigator in seller performance go in and look at the account. And ultimately they decide, do I send another policy warning? Do I block another listing? Or do I suspend the account? So we're essentially doing the same thing that they're doing.
Yeah.
And going in and deciding, okay, well, if you cleaned this up, that would reduce the chance of them deciding to suspend the account. And a lot of that is to do with responding to things. So if you're getting policy warnings or you're just letting sit in your account health dashboard, I mean, that's the first place we look. Anything in your account health dashboard that hasn't been responded to, that's number one priority. Second priority is any other issues that aren't just one-offs. So if I'm looking at the listings, do you have a whole lot of things in your listings that aren't compliant with the style guide or laws or anything? Images, even sometimes images, if you have all of your listings have images that are against policy, that can result in an account suspension. So we're looking for any patterns that an Amazon investigator would look at and decide, okay, well, we're just going to take this account down.
Yeah, and let me just throw this one idea out there before we wrap up, which is there are a lot of services out there offering listing optimization.
Yeah.
Please be careful.
Be very careful with how you vet a service, because there are a lot of people who are like, you'll get more sales from using this technique or using these keywords. There's a lot of this stuff going on. The sellers hiring those services sometimes assume that those people know Amazon policies 100%. They assume that all the techniques and all the methods they're giving you are valid and are usable and you won't get suspended. Don't make that assumption. There are lots of listings that we've seen where the seller themselves has to say, I'm not using that.
Right, we get that a lot. They have no idea that it's actually in their listing because somebody else put it in there for them.
Somebody else put it in there, and maybe it improved their sales rank for a while. Maybe it improved their searchability, but just as often their listings get suspended, or maybe even their account got a policy violation simply because they assumed that, oh, well, these guys are established listing optimization experts. We see a lot of listing optimization companies making these mistakes. Maybe they're not even aware of the policy themselves.
Or their website says TOS compliant, so they're like, must be true.
Right. Yeah. Just making that assumption can be dangerous. I mean, we understand that you might get a little bump in sales rank, but at what cost, right?
Well, that's what I always tell sellers. If your sales rank isn't going to be good if you can't sell that product anymore.
Right.
It doesn't matter how great your content is if it's suspended.
Exactly. Regarding account review, who do you think is the ideal seller that should reach out to you for preventing anything from happening in their account? Is it just someone just to make sure that everything's okay? Or do you think, like, if you get a warning message, you want someone to check it out for you?
Yeah, we get both, to be honest. We do get people who are just being extremely proactive and they just want to have a check and make sure everything's okay. More often than not, though, it is because they received a policy warning or they're getting blocked listings, or the little dial at the top of the account health dashboard has gone into the yellow or the red. That's usually when we hear from people. But I mean, ideally, you're doing it before Amazon catches it. Often, their account health dashboard will be completely clear, but we'll still find issues in the accounts that Amazon just haven't flagged yet.
Yes.
So it's certainly better to just be proactive. We like to say that if you set it up correctly in the first place, you don't have to worry about it so much or redo it in the future. So yeah, I mean, it really, at any stage, it's good to have an account review either by us or, by even doing it yourself. We have resources on our website if people want to try to do it themselves.
Yes. Speaking of the website, just to let everyone know, you support Amazon sellers everywhere, not only in the US, you support, anywhere you
Yes.
sell on Amazon, you're able to support sellers. So because it's really fantastic and it's such a global business. But before
Mhm.
we tell people how they can reach out to you, with everything that we're saying and all of the issues that are happening with Amazon, I get a lot of people saying, so here in the Middle East, as you guys know, we have another marketplace. Everywhere there's another marketplace, but we have
Right.
another marketplace that could be an alternative to Amazon,
Mhm.
maybe similar to Walmart, let's say,
Mhm.
which is
Mhm.
called this particular marketplace is called Noon. So I get a lot of
Mhm.
messages and a lot of comments on the YouTube channel saying, Amazon is such a hassle. I'm just gonna focus and sell on Noon. And and for me, I would definitely love to know your opinion. But my opinion is no, like you can get through it. And if it's hard for you, well, it's hard for everybody else. So
Mhm.
that's even better because less competition. And I
Right.
don't think we're at a point where we should say, no, 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 I'm just going to sell on this marketplace and I'm just going to avoid Amazon. Why not? You can do what you can do both. You can sell anywhere you want. But what do you think
Right.
about that, Chris, and then Leah, of course? What do you think
Right. I
it's
mean,
it's you should do the hard work and sell on Amazon, or should you just go sell somewhere else?
I think it's fair to say that Amazon isn't for everyone. There are some people who might not have a really thick skin or, Amazon's tough. Um, some people want to do like a 1 to 2 mile hike and it's a day hike and they don't want to do a 2 or 3 night overnight trek through the mountains. Amazon is the trek through the mountains.
Yeah.
Let's not sugarcoat this. It's not going to be easy. It's not easy dealing with competitors on Amazon. It's not easy dealing with Amazon. If you need it to be easy, then you might want to do the marketplace with less traffic,
Yeah.
fewer sales, but understand that you're going to be making less money.
Yeah.
In most cases, not all,
Mm.
but in most cases, Amazon represents more revenue, more growth, more potential globally, not just in the US marketplace, not just in the UK. Like you said, we're working with sellers all over the world.
Yeah.
But Amazon gives and it takes away. It
Yeah.
might take away your hours of free time. You might be working more weekends. You might be more stressed out. I think Amazon knows this and they're okay with it. They're okay with taking your weekends and stressing you out a little bit more. And I hate to say this because everyone likes to talk about work-life balance, but
What's that?
unfortunately in the Amazon space, let's say, whether you're a consultant or a seller or, services, in the Amazon space, they expect a certain standard, which is you're thinking about your business all the time. You're working most of the time. You're paying attention to problems with your account almost all the time. You're paying attention to Amazon buyers all the time. And it's an all the time thing. It's maybe not 24/7, but it's pretty close.
Yeah.
So if you're not up for it and you're not kind of battle hardened, ready to fight for certain things, maybe it's not for you. I mean, I'll defer to Leah for kind of her
Yeah.
perspective on it.
Well, one thing we're seeing here that I think is kind of interesting is we're seeing certain other platforms and certain brands actually listing the fact that they don't sell on Amazon as an ethical choice. So there's actually a couple of platforms here where you can filter the products by not sold on Amazon because it's like a more ethical choice, which I think is an interesting thing. But also keep in mind that if your brand is of a certain size, even if you're not selling it on Amazon, somebody else probably is.
Yeah,
So-
100%.
So
Yeah.
like you can't have no presence on Amazon if your brand is of a certain size. So even if you're not selling on Amazon, you still are going to have to deal with protecting your IP, deal with, who knows what is being sold on there. And if people are selling counterfeit items on Amazon of your product, you're still going to get customers contacting you for resolution.
It's true.
So if you're selling it yourself, you have a little bit more control over how that's working. But my biggest thing is differentiate, like don't just sell on Amazon.
Right.
That's the worst spot where we see people who are suspended and Amazon is their entire business.
Yes.
You need to have
course.
other channels. So
Because
whether
the
that's your
business
own
ends. Yeah.
right, so whether it's your own website or other platforms or both, ideally, you know, going all in on Amazon is a very risky thing, which, you know, you see a lot of marketers talk about. If you have an audience on Facebook, that's Facebook's audience, and they could shut that down at any point. Like, you need to have your email list and your website as well as Amazon in order to have a sustainable business.
Okay, 100%. How can people, what is the best way for people? Obviously, they need to check your website, but what is the best way for them to contact you?
So ecommercechris.com is the website. If they want more information about the conference, since that's coming up soon, sellervelocityconference.com, best place to go there.
Just shoot us an email.
Yeah, email as well.
support@ecommercechris.com. And then, of course, we are on all of the social channels. So
that's right.
You can find us TikTok, YouTube.
Oh, you're
Facebook,
TikToking.
Twitter.
Okay, you're
Facebook
TikToking
is
as
still-
well.
Chris won't dance, but we're trying.
No?
No. I'll do talking on TikTok. I don't do the things that people actually want to watch on TikTok.
Yeah, no.
Yeah. The funny stuff, the dancing, you know, we'll create a clone of me and have that person.
We're working on it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll leave
double.
everything linked in the description box of the video for sure.
Awesome.
And
Thank you so much.
anyone that has anything, they can just shoot you an email, get some more information, get some more support, and hopefully nobody gets suspended. So for everyone who's watching this or is listening to this, make sure that you do your due diligence. So at the end of the day, if you are doing something wrong, Amazon is going to catch you. It's their platform. They're probably going to kick you off. So make sure you don't do anything wrong, and don't expect, you know, Amazon to be nice. Sometimes they're not. So
Communicative.
yeah.
Yeah.
So you just
responsive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So just do the work. And at the end of the day, this is a business. We're here to, you know, everybody's selling on Amazon to make money. So you might as well just do the right thing so that, you know, the money keeps coming in and it doesn't get shut down. That's it.
Exactly.
Thank you so much, guys, for your
us.
time.
Yeah,
we're looking forward to meeting you.
Sure.
Thank you so much to Leah and Chris for all of their insights. If you want to contact eCommerce Chris, I'll leave their website in the description box of this video. And if you want to register and attend Seller Velocity at the end of April in Oregon, I will also leave the link, and I will see you there. I'll see you in another video with more information. Bye.